There are a lot of models of sports motorcycles in the world. Every self-respecting motorcycle company tries its hand at creating excellent sports racing machines, and the names of the most common representatives of this family are probably familiar to you. However, in the history of motorcycle manufacturing, there are much less well-known motorcycles. I'm going to tell you about one of them in this story. This motorcycle was equipped with a perfectly balanced longitudinal engine of a unique design, which produced 220 horsepower, 4 cylinders, 2 crankshafts, and 3 camshafts, a carbon frame, front suspension on linear bearings, and an extremely narrow streamlined silhouette. The American sport bike, mostly designed by one person in a garage, proved to be excellent. Presenting to you MotoSiz C One, you're on the Cross Moto channel. Enjoy watching. The story of the creation of this, and I'm not afraid to use the word, unique sport bike is closely tied to the name of the American MotoSiz. Siz was born in 1964, later studied at Portland State University, and then transferred to Parsons School of Design in New York. The fact that Michael didn't finish his studies in New York didn't stop him from opening his own design firm, Architropolis, where Siz designed houses for celebrities, hotels, and casinos. Michael's love for motorcycles is a family tradition. Both his grandfather and father were involved with motorcycles and some racing. So at an early age, MotoSiz got acquainted with motorcycles and became captivated by them. And so it's 2004, and Siz seems to have the perfect life. He's 40 years old, has a family, is raising children, and his company brings in a solid income. However, he hardly has any time for his motorcycle. Unlike in his younger years. At a certain moment, Siz had an epiphany. Consumers from the United States buy more Ducati and Ferrari than in any other country, and we don't produce any of that. Some online sources compare MotoSiz's story to that of Australian John Britton's motorcycle. And that's no coincidence. As MotoSiz himself said, "I saw Britton's motorcycle in person, and it was a revelation for me. And I told myself that this wouldn't be the last time someone tried to invent their own motorcycle." So you get what motivated Siz. He decided to build a motorcycle of his own design. Yes, not just a motorcycle, but an advanced racing machine. Communication with fellow motorcycle racers turned out to be very important for the final design of the motorcycle. They explained to Michael which details and design solutions are critically important during a race. In the mid-2000s, Michael began designing his motorcycle in his garage with the support of his father. Along the way, Siz Z will patent about 30 original engineering solutions and also establish the company MotoSiz in Portland, Oregon. The most important element of the motorcycle's design was completed in 2006. It's his unique, so-called Z-shaped engine. In the original, the term sounds like Z-Line 4. So what is this power unit? At first glance, it may seem like this is a longitudinal inline 4, like on vintage Henderson Fabrique Nationale or Indian 4 motorcycles, but in reality, the MotoSiz C One engine is a bit more complicated. In fact, it's actually 2 V-twins joined together with a very small cylinder angle of just 15 degrees. Essentially, it's a tandem engine. Why don't I call it a V4 or a V-Ryan motor engine? After all, there is a certain similarity to Lancia and Volkswagen Group engines with a small cylinder angle. The thing is, the MotoSiz engine has 2 crankshafts that are connected by a gear drive. One crankshaft serves cylinders 1 and 2, the other serves 3 and 4. These crankshafts rotate in opposite directions, fully canceling the gyroscopic moment of the longitudinally mounted engine. Thanks to this exotic solution, Siz's engine turned out to be perfectly balanced, without the use of additional balancing shafts. By the way, initially Siz planned an inline 4, but there were problems with compactness. That's why Michael looked towards the so-called V-type engines. And the decision to split the crankshaft in two and reverse the rotation direction of one of them was driven by the desire to create a machine perfectly suited for quick transitions in corners. Since the cylinder bank angle is minimal, this made it possible to use a single cylinder head with 3 camshafts. At the top, those black ovals are the engine's intake ports. With a displacement of 990 cubic centimeters, they managed to get 220 horsepower at 15,000 revolutions per minute and 108 newton meters of torque. Siz noted that the engine revs up to maximum speed very quickly, and its sound was truly American, very similar to the sound of a V8. A quick-release 6-speed gearbox was placed under the engine. Quick release so that during a race, the gear ratios could be changed quickly. A dual slip clutch was also used in the design. 3 years earlier than on the production Honda Cross Tourer 1200 motorcycle. To effectively dissipate heat from the engine, a combined cooling system with 3 radiators is used, one of which is located in the tail section of the motorcycle. The unique power unit is installed in an equally well-designed chassis. The C1 frame is made of carbon. The fork uses a monoshock, and the fork tubes move on linear bearings. Components from top brands are used: Brembo brakes, Jolene suspension elements, and so on. The motorcycle weighs only 158 kilograms, which is a very respectable figure for its class in 2006. For comparison, the racing Yamaha YZR-M, one of 2023, weighs 157 kilograms. As a result, MotoSiz ended up with a revolutionary racing motorcycle with great potential. However, it so happened that this machine was not destined to compete on the track. The main race regulatory bodies were to blame for everything. Siz initially considered the World Superbike. According to the rules of this championship, as the owner of a small motorcycle company, he had to homologate 150 units of equipment. In simpler terms, Michael had to build 150 motorcycles for civilian use in order to be allowed to race. This is a common practice in many competitions. That's why the prototype is equipped with a headlight. But, as it often happens, the rules suddenly changed, and now any motorcycle manufacturer was required to homologate at least 1,500 units, 10 times more. Siz's small company lacked the resources to handle such a batch. He looked towards MotoGP and its field full of prototypes, which had recently switched to 4-stroke engines. There was hope for participation, but as soon as MotoSiz C One came to life and completed a test run, the rules changed. In 2007, MotoGP limited the engine displacement to 800 cc. As Siz said, the 800s changed everything by raising the revs to 18,000. And that's the territory of pneumatic valves, and we just couldn't afford to develop them. Not to mention, you can't use pneumatics on the street. So, with the budget running out, the project stopped at the prototype stage. However, Sizu still managed to find a niche where his technology would succeed. He builds the electric racing machine MotoSiz E1 PC, which debuts on the Isle of Man in 2009 with the racer Mark Miller. That year, the machine didn't finish due to technical reasons, but already in the next year, 2010, in the Tourist Trophy Zero race, Sizu's creation wins. It was a success. In 2013, the ambitious engineer and designer was given a disappointing diagnosis: cancer. For 3 years, MotoSiz fought the disease, spending his earnings and distracting himself from the illness by participating in amateur races. He passed away on May 7, 2016. That's the sad story, my friends, of motorcycle designer MotoSiz and his unique Superbike Si-1. This is one of the many rather dramatic pages in the history of motorcycle engineering, which, however, at a certain point in the future, may inspire another enthusiast to create a new motorcycle masterpiece. At this point, my story comes to an end.